The void between stars is not silent. It listens. It remembers. And on the frozen, wind-scoured rock designated Outpost Kappa 7, the void held its breath. The last transmission from the outpost was not a distress call, not a scream, but a 5-second burst of raw audio. The crisp, methodical click-clack of a weapon being checked, a low, calm human voice whispering, there in the vents, and then a chilling, familiar melody hummed off-key, a children's nursery rhyme. When a rescue ship from the Galactic Consensus finally arrived, they found the attackers' vessels dead in orbit and the outpost a tomb of frozen alien horror. The only thing left functioning was the outpost's beacon, broadcasting that same tune on a loop across the light years. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a receipt, and it was addressed to Earth. The transport shuttle whisper cut through the thin, toxic atmosphere of Tau Ceti F, its engines a muted whine against the howling gale outside. In its belly, Sergeant Kalen Vance of the Human Expeditionary Forces watched the data stream on his retinal display. Outpost Kappa 7, a joint xenoarchaeological research station, had gone dark 48 standard hours ago. The Galactic Consensus, in its infinite bureaucratic wisdom, had dispatched a first contact mediation vessel first. That vessel had arrived, sent one garbled message about unauthorized organic restructuring, and vanished from the scopes. Now, it was the humans' turn. Vance's team, designated custodians in polite diplomatic circles, filled the hold. There was Rook, a mountain of a man who spoke in grunts, and whose powered armor was scratched from things with claws. Lynn, the tech weaver, her fingers already dancing over a holographic interface, pulling silent feeds from the outpost's dead cameras. And the youngest, Kaido, a sniper whose eyes held the calm of deep space. They were not an army. They were a scalpel. Officially, they were here to secure, assess, and assist. The whisper settled on the landing pad with a soft thud. The silence was immediate, oppressive. Consensus protocol dictated a hail, an offer of medical aid, a scan for life signs. Vance opened the channel. Kappa 7. This is HEF Vessel Whisper. We are here to assist. Please respond. Nothing. The external scans painted a picture of nominal integrity. Minimal external damage. Life support offline, but reparable. No power signatures except a single, low-frequency beacon from the central hub. Lynn, Vance murmured. Already in, she replied. Camera logs are corrupted. Last visual is confused. Movement. Fust. Not consensus design. Atmosphere is breathable cold. -40 Celsius. No life signs reading. None at all. Rook hefted his heavy cannon. That's not right. A whole outpost doesn't just go to zero. Even the dead leave a heat signature. Vance made the call. Sealed suits. Full tactical. We go quiet. Kaido, find a perch. Cover the approach. Rook, point. Lynn, stay mid, keep us linked, and sniff for any data ghosts. The airlock cycled, and the cold hit them like a physical wall. The outpost was a series of interconnected domes and low buildings coated in rime and frozen condensation. No lights, no movement. The first dome, the main habitation module, had its primary airlock door slightly ajar, a long, frozen smear of a dark, resin-like substance bridging the gap between the interior and the exterior. Inside, the story unfolded in frozen tableaus. Consensus species, a bird-like Telari, a lumbering mineral-based Grum, were posed in positions of sudden, violent cessation. They were not just dead, they were rearranged. Frozen fluids, organic and alien, created abstract patterns on walls and floors. There were no human remains. Yet, Lynn's scanners picked up the faint power source, leading them deeper in. The central hub. Here, they found the first sign of deliberate human activity. In the middle of the command deck, a standard-issue field ration heater was still slightly warm, a cup of half-melted coffee next to it. The main console was a ruin, but not from attack. It had been expertly scavenged for parts. Wires ran from its guts to a jury-rigged transmitter, the source of the beacon. Lynn isolated the broadcast. It was a simple data packet repeating. She decoded it. It wasn't a message. It was a file, a security log. The visual was grainy from a helmet cam. It showed a human Marine, breathing ragged, holding a choke point in a narrow corridor. The audio was the click-clack, the whisper, the hum. Then, the feed showed the attackers for the first time. They were nightmares of chitin and blade-limbed efficiency, moving with a terrifying, skittering grace. They poured from vents and conduits. The Marine fired precise, controlled bursts. They fell, but more came. The log ended as one leapt, its bladed limb filling the frame. Vance stared at the frozen image. Those aren't consensus. They aren't anything in the database. Predators, Rook growled. More than that, Lynn said, her voice soft. Look at the patterns. The arrangement of the bodies outside. This isn't just killing. It's harvesting. It's curation. A soft, scraping sound echoed from a ventilation shaft above them. All lights on their armor snapped to the source. Nothing. Silence. Kaito, report. Vance whispered into the comms. Que é grave, Sarge. Too quiet. Wind just died. You have movement. Thermal ghosting. Northeast of your position, sublevel access. Fading. It's like their heat sinks. Kaito's voice was a thread of calm. Vance motioned. The team moved as one, a trained organism, toward the sublevel access. The door was torn open, not cut. The darkness below was absolute. Their helmet lights pierced it, revealing a staircase descending into the planet's crust. The walls here were no longer manufactured metal. They were covered in an organic, hive-like resin. And the hum, the one from the beacon, was faintly audible here, vibrating through the floor. Lynn's scanner chirped urgently. Biological traces. Off the scale. This isn't their crime scene, Sarge. She looked up, her face pale in her helmet's glow. This is their front door. Vance looked back the way they came, at the carefully staged horror in the habitation dome, at the single, warming cup of coffee. A message, a receipt, and a trail. The raid on the Outpost wasn't the end. It was the opening move, and his team had just been invited to play. We go down, he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. We find what took our people, and we explain to them why that was the last mistake they'll ever make. The darkness swallowed them whole. The descent was a journey into a living nightmare. The manufactured stairs gave way to natural rock, then to a tunnel system smooth and glossy with secreted resin. The air grew thicker, warmer, carrying a cloying, metallic scent. Their suit filters hissed, working overtime. The hum was no longer a distant vibration. It was a palpable thrum in the air, the sound of a vast, hidden machine. Lynn's scans painted a horrifying schematic on their HUDs. The tunnels were a sprawling, three-dimensional latticework, descending kilometers into the planetary crust. Life signs blossomed on the edge of her detection range. Thousands of them, clustered and moving with disturbing synchronicity. It's a hive, she confirmed, her voice tight. A massive, subterranean hive. The Outpost, they built it right on top of the Queen's front porch. They found the first human sign in a side chamber. A makeshift barricade of broken mining equipment and furniture expertly arranged to create a kill zone. Spent brass from standard issue human rifles littered the floor. The walls were pocked with both bullet impacts and deep, scoring gouges from alien claws. A stained, torn piece of HEF uniform was pinned to the wall with a sharpened piece of chitin. A message. Hold fast. Vance read the stitched name tape. Private J, hold fast. He pulled the chitin free. It was long, serrated, and still faintly sharp. He tucked it into a utility pouch. He held. Further in, the evidence of a fighting retreat became a roadmap. Scorched patches where incendiary grenades had burned away the resin. Chitinous fragments of attackers. Every 50 meters or so, another barricade, another spent cache of ammunition. They were following the path of the Outpost security detail, what was left of them. They were being led, not into a trap, but through a gallery of grim, human defiance. The tunnel opened into a vast, cavernous space. Their helmet lights barely pierced the gloom, reflecting off countless organic structures that hung from the ceiling and rose from the floor. Pulsing, sack-like nurseries, resin-coated walls honeycombed with cells. This was the heart of the hive, and in the center they saw it. A makeshift fortress had been erected around a crashed, cylindrical object, the escape pod from the Outpost command module. It was buried under layers of resin, but human engineering had reinforced it with scrap metal, creating a bunker. Around it, a ring of fire. Literally, the ground was charred black. The resin melted into bubbling, hardened waves. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, of alien carcasses lay in concentric circles around the pod, frozen in death, some still smoldering. By the stars, Kaito's voice breathed over the comms from his distant overwatch, his scope providing a top-down view. They made their stand, in the belly of the beast. As they watched movement, a figure, clad in battered, patched EVA suit, emerged from a hatch on the pod. It moved slowly, dragging something. A body, wrapped in a tattered flag. The figure laid it carefully on the scorched earth, then began piling stones around it. A burial, in the middle of the hive. Vance signaled for absolute silence. They observed. The figure finished its task, stood silently for a moment, then turned and scanned the cavern with a rifle that had been modified almost beyond recognition. Its gaze swept past their hiding spot. Vance could see the face behind the cracked visor. Hollow eyes, a grim-set mouth, skin pale and stretched tight over bone. But the eyes held a fire, a cold, unyielding focus. The figure moved to a specific point on the pod's hull and tapped a sequence. A hidden compartment hissed open. From it, the human withdrew a series of small, blocky devices, HEF issue, seismic charges, used for geological surveys. With calm, methodical precision, the survivor began placing them at key structural points around the pod fortress, under major resin supports, near the base of the largest nursery clusters. He's not trying to escape, Lynn realized, her whisper filled with awe. He's mining the place. He's going to bring the entire mountain down on the hive. Before Vance could decide on a course of action, the hum of the hive changed pitch. It rose to a frenzied, angry buzz. From dozens of tunnels surrounding the cavern, a new wave of creatures poured forth. These were larger, bulkier than the skirmishers they'd seen in the log. Guard forms, and they weren't heading for the pod. They were flanking, moving with clear tactical intent, heading straight for Vance's team's position. Their quiet observation was over. Contact. Multiple hostiles, converging on our location. Rook bellowed, his cannon coming up with a whine. The survivor in the cavern heard the commotion. He didn't startle. He simply finished arming the last charge, looked directly at the tunnel where Vance's team was about to be overrun, and gave a single, slow nod. Then he raised his rifle and fired a single, high-energy tracer round. It didn't hit the aliens. It streaked across the cavern and impacted a large, suspended resin sack high above the approaching guard forms. The sack burst, showering them in a torrent of viscous, sticky fluid. The guard forms shrieked, their advance faltering as they struggled with the sudden obstruction. "It's an invitation," Vance said, "to the dance. Let's RSVP." Rook grinned savagely. The team opened fire. The cavern erupted in controlled chaos. Kinetic rounds from human weapons tore through chitin. Alien screeches mixed with the calm, professional call-outs of the custodians. Reloading, flanking left, target down. Through the storm of combat, Vance saw the survivor. He wasn't hiding. He was moving along the edge of the fire rim, drawing fire, picking off aliens with precise, almost surgical shots. He was fighting his war, and he had just enlisted them as allies. It took 10 brutal minutes. The last guard form fell, twitching, to the charred ground. The immediate area was silent, save for the crackle of burning resin and the heavy breathing of the humans. The survivor lowered his rifle and walked toward them, his gait stiff but steady. He stopped a few meters from Vance, his cracked visor reflecting the team's helmet lights. He reached up, disengaged the seals on his helmet with a hiss, and pulled it off. The face was older than Vance expected, etched with exhaustion and grief, but the eyes were clear and sharp. "Sergeant Eli Vance, HEF Custodians," Vance said, identifying himself. The survivor nodded. "Corporal Eris Thorne, Kappa, 7 Security Detail. Took you long enough." He gestured with his chin toward the buried escape pod. "Got 23 civilians in there. What's left of them? They're alive. Barely." Vance felt a surge of something fierce and protective. "We're getting you all out." Thorne's smile was a thin, grim slash. "Oh, we're leaving. But we're not just walking out." He pointed to the charges he'd placed. "We're taking the house with us. They made one mistake, Sergeant." "What's that?" Thorne's eyes went to the dark tunnels, to the pulsating heart of the hive. "They didn't kill all of us. They left witnesses, and we've been studying them. We know where the Queen is. You blow her chamber, this entire network goes neuroshock. They all stop. Permanently." He looked back at Vance, the fire in his eyes now a roaring inferno. "You brought an army?" Vance looked at his team of 4. "We brought a solution." Thorne nodded. "Good. Then, let me show you how to really hurt them." The inside of the crashed escape pod was a tomb of hushed terror and makeshift survival. 24 non-combatants, scientists, xenobotanists, a doctor, huddled in the dim light of flickering emergency lamps. The air was stale, recycled to its limit, thick with the smell of fear, sweat, and antiseptic. When Thorne led Vance's team inside, a fragile hope sparked in the civilians' eyes, quickly tempered by the sight of the battered, blood-spattered custodians. Thorne moved among them with a quiet, firm assurance. "This is Sergeant Vance. Extraction is a go. But we do it my way. The quiet way is gone. We go loud, and we go for the head." He introduced a young woman, her arm in a sling made from torn lab coat fabric. "This is Dr. Alara Voss, xenolinguist." She figured out their communication. Voss's voice was hoarse from disuse and recycled air. "It's not language, not like ours. It's a harmonic resonance, carried through the resin, through the air itself. A vibration of intent, the humming. We recorded it." She gestured to a jury-rigged console, a fusion of Outpost tech and strip hive components. The attack patterns, the harvesting, it's all dictated by the Queen's frequency. She broadcasts a constant signal of consumption, of expansion. The workers and warriors are just instruments. Lynn was already interfacing, her eyes wide. This is a decryption of their hive mind lattice. You build a translator from scrap. We had time, Thorne said flatly. And motivation. Vance studied the schematics pulled from Thorne and Voss's work. The hive was a dendritic network, with a central, heavily fortified chamber nearly a kilometer below their current position, the Queen's Node. Thorne's plan was brutally simple. Use the seismic charges not just for demolition, but as a resonant weapon. Tune them to a specific, overwhelming counterfrequency key from Voss's research and detonate them at the Queen's chamber. In theory, it would send a catastrophic feedback pulse through the entire resin network, overloading the basic neural functions of every connected creature. It's a brain bomb, Lynn summarized, a mix of horror and professional admiration in her tone. It's a message, Thorne corrected. You don't raid our home and get to keep yours. The plan had two phases. First, the custodians, guided by Thorne, would fight their way to a primary resin conduit, a main artery of the hive, and plant the primary charge array. Second, they would create a diversion so catastrophic that the hive's defenses would be pulled away from both the pod and their path to the Queen. That diversion will be Kaido. The sniper listened to his role without a flicker of emotion. He was to backtrack to a high, thermally volatile geothermal vent they'd passed, one the hive had tapped for energy. Using his longest range, highest penetration rounds, he was to cause a containment rupture. The resulting explosive release of heat and pressure would mimic a massive attack, drawing the hive's warriors toward the perceived threat. You'll be alone, exposed, and once you fire, every bug in the place will know where you are, Vance told him. Kaido simply nodded, checking the scope on his rifle. I'll need 11 minutes of chaos. Make them count. He melted into the shadows of the tunnel without another word. The rest geared up. Thorne donned a replenished power cell for his suit and took point, his knowledge of the hive's twisted layout invaluable. Rook carried the bulk of the seismic charges, a massive pack on his back. Lin kept the frequency modulator secure, a device now wired into the charges. Vance coordinated, his mind juggling the timelines, the fallbacks, the lives of the civilians they would leave behind, guarded only by a few automated turrets stripped from the Whisper. The journey to the primary conduit was a descent into a living hell. The hive was now fully aware of them. The skirmishers attacked in relentless, probing waves, not to overwhelm, but to delay, to test, to hurt. Thorne fought with a frightening, intimate knowledge of the enemy. He knew where they would emerge, their weak points, their tactics. He moved not like a soldier in a foreign land, but like a hunter in his own woods. They reached the conduit chamber. It was cathedral-like, a massive, pulsating tube of translucent resin running vertically through the rock, throbbing with internal, bioluminescent flows. This was the hive's spinal cord. Rook began setting the charges with practiced efficiency. Above, the world erupted. First a deep, subterranean thump, then a roar that vibrated through the very rock. Alarm shrieked through the hive's harmonic hum, a sound of panic and rage. Kaido had done his job. The geothermal vent had blown. The hive's attention swung violently away from them. Charges set. Rook yelled over the growing dissonance in the air. Modulator active. Lin confirmed, her fingers flying. Frequency is live. We have a 73% resonance match. It's the best we can do without direct Queen Node data. It'll have to be enough, Thorne said. He looked at Vance. The diversion won't hold forever. The Queen will realize the real threat is internal. We have to move. Now, to her. As they turned to fight their way to the deeper tunnels, a new sound cut through the chaos. Not the skittering of chitin, not the hum of the hive. It was a wet, tearing, growing sound. From the walls of the conduit chamber, The resin bulged, then split. Something new emerged. It was colossal, a biomechanical horror of plated armor and crushing mandibles. A royal guard, a living fortress. It filled the chamber, blocking their only exit. Its multifaceted eyes fixed on them, and it emitted a vibration so deep it made their bones ache. The message was clear: no further. Thorn looked at the beast, then at the charges on the conduit, then at Vance. A grim calculus flashed in his eyes. "The plan changes," he said, his voice calm. "You take the team. You get to the Queen. Use the secondary charges Lynn has. You have the frequency. Finish it. What about you?" Vance demanded. Thorn hefted his modified rifle. It whined, overloading its power cell. "I'll give you your 73%. I'll get you direct Queen node data." He nodded toward the Royal Guard. "I'm going to make it scream." Before Vance could protest, Thorn was moving, not away, but toward the monstrosity, firing a stream of superheated plasma directly into its sensory cluster. The beast shrieked, a physical wave of sound, and lurched after him. Thorn led it on a chase around the chamber, away from the charges, away from the exit. "Go!" Thorn's voice was a crackle over the comms, already strained. "Take my people home." Vance made the call, the hardest of his life. "Move! Now!" They broke for the exit, the sounds of Thorn's last stand, the roar of his rifle, the shrieks of the Royal Guard, and beneath it, the defiant, off-key hum of that same nursery rhyme, echoing at their backs as they plunged into the deep dark toward the heart of the nightmare. The hymn of Thorn's last stand faded into the groaning depths of the hive, replaced by a new, more terrible silence. Vance pushed the grief and fury down, hardening it into a diamond-sharp focus. Thorn had bought them a path with his life. They would spend that currency wisely. Lynn, her face wet with tears she refused to acknowledge, monitored the data stream from Thorn's suit until the signal terminated abruptly. "I have it," she whispered, her voice raw. The Royal Guard's defensive resonance. Thorn provoked a full-spectrum response. "I can refine the frequency. Queen node signature is now at 94% certainty." She uploaded the data to the secondary, smaller charge pack Vance now carried. The hive around them was in disarray, but it was the chaos of a wounded giant, thrashing and dangerous. The geothermal explosion had caused cave-ins and redirected energy flows. Bioluminescent fungus flickered erratically. Alien workers scurried in confused patterns, some attacking each other in their distress. The harmonic hum was now a discordant, pained cacophony. They moved with brutal efficiency, a spear driving downward. Rook was a battering ram of controlled violence, his cannon clearing passages blocked by disoriented warriors. Vance and Lynn provided precise, lethal cover. They encountered less organized resistance, but the way was treacherous, shifting resin, sudden plasma vent leaks from the hive's disrupted systems, and the ever-present psychic weight of the hive's anguish. They descended through a region that was different. The organic resin gave way to integrated technology, smooth, dark alloy fused with chitin. Conduits of cold light pulsed alongside bioluminescent veins. They weren't just harvesting biological matter, Lynn realized, scanning. They were integrating tech. From the Outpost, from the consensus mediation ship. This is adaptive bioengineering on a terrifying scale. The Queen was not just a biological entity. She was the central processor of a living, learning weapon. The raid on Kappa 7 wasn't for food. It was for raw materials and information. The final chamber was not a cavern, but a vast, geodesic dome of alloy and resin. At its center, suspended in a web of crystalline energy filaments and thick, nutrient-filled tubes was the queen. She was a beautiful, horrific thing, a gigantic, pulsating cephalopod-like form, her mantle shimmering with stolen data lights, her single, planetoid eye a swirl of stolen knowledge and cold, infinite hunger. Around her in silent orbits floated the preserved, dissected forms of a Telari from the consensus ship and a human in an EVA suit, trophies and studies. The chamber floor was alive with protectors, not warriors, but delicate, multi-limbed tenders, their claws sharp as molecular scalpels. They didn't attack. They watched, their focus entirely on maintaining the queen and her web. Vance signaled for halt. They took cover behind a buttress of fused metal. Place the charges. Primary nodes at the base of those three main support filaments, he ordered, pointing. Rook nodded, moving with a surprising stealth for his size. Lin set up the modulator, linking it to the charges. Frequency is loaded. 94% match. On detonation, the resonant feedback should travel through the entire network. It should be catastrophic for her. Should? Vance asked. Her biotech integration is beyond my models. She might be able to dampen it or isolate the node. We need to raise the match to 100%. Ow! We need a live, direct transmission from her. Right now, for the modulator to sample and perfectly mirror. Vance looked at the queen, at the swirling eye filled with stolen screams and nursery rhymes. You mean we have to get her to talk to us? To scream, Lin corrected grimly. Before they could devise a plan, the queen's eye swiveled. It fixed not on them, but on a point above them. The humming in the chamber coalesced into a voice, a horrible parody of a human voice, stitched together from stolen audio logs. Little. Scalpels. You. Cut. Deep. You bring. Noise. I. Collect noise. The voice was a weapon, scraping against their sanity. The tenders on the floor shifted, turning their sensory clusters toward the team's hiding spot. You are. New data. More. Resilient. The old one. The soldier. His frequency was spicy. You will be richer. Rage, white-hot, and pure flashed through Vance. The old one. Thorn. He stood up from cover, stepping into the open. Lin hissed a warning, but Vance held up a hand. He looked directly into the queen's massive, knowing eye. You took our people, Vance said, his voice cutting through the alien hum. You took our home. You think we're data? We're a lesson. All things. Our data. Pain. Fear. Defiance. I assimilate. I become more. The queen's filaments glowed brighter. Vance felt a pressure, not in his ears, but in his mind. A cold, probing presence. She was trying to read him, to sample him right there. I have something for your collection, Vance growled. He reached into his utility pouch and pulled out the serrated chitin he'd taken from Holdfast's makeshift grave. He held it up, a small, insignificant thing in the vast chamber. Private J, hold fast. He held the line. Corporal Eris Thorn. He showed us the way. They weren't spicy data. They were a warning. And you didn't listen. He threw the chitin. It clattered harmlessly against the base of the queen's web. A gesture of utter, human defiance. The queen's eye swirled, colors shifting to a furious, violent crimson. The mental pressure spiked into a psychic shriek of pure, unadulterated offense. The harmony of the hive shattered into a screeching feedback loop of rage. The tenders on the floor recoiled. Defiance. Yes. Give it to me, the queen's stolen voice roared. Now, Lin. Vance shouted. Got it. Live feed. 100% match. Modulating. Lin's fingers were a blur. The modulator whined, its lights sinking to the violent, psychic frequency of the queen's rage. Rook finished placing the last charge. Charges set. Remote trigger active. The Queen, sensing the new, perfect mirror of her own essence emanating from their device, realized the trap. Her shriek of rage turned to one of primal fear. She thrashed in her web, energy filaments snapping. The tenders surged forward, not to study but to kill. Fall back, Vance ordered. They ran for the chamber entrance, laying down a withering field of fire. Rook lobbed a grenade into the advancing swarm of tenders. The explosion of shrapnel and flame bought them seconds. They burst back into the tunnel just as Lynn slammed her fist onto the modulator's trigger. There was no sound. For a heart-stopping second, nothing. Then a pulse, not of light or heat, but of pure, silent negation. It washed out from the chamber like a tide, visible only as a ripple in the air, a distortion that turned the resin walls glassy and still. Behind them, the Queen's psychic scream was cut off. Utterly. They felt it through their boots, through the air. The hum, the constant awful background noise of the hive, stopped. Everywhere, the bioluminescent fungi dimmed to a faint, fading glow. The hive didn't just go quiet, it went empty. Vance leaned against the tunnel wall, breathing hard. In his helmet, Kaido's voice, strained but alive, crackled. Diversion complete. Hive activity just ceased. All of it. What did you do? Vance looked back at the dark, dead chamber. We delivered the message, he said quietly. Then, switching channels to the pod. Dr. Voss, prepare your people. We're coming home. The return to the surface was a journey through a catacomb of statues. Every creature they passed, from the smallest worker to a towering guard form caught mid-stride, was frozen, lifeless, its internal lights dark. The hive was a monument to its own extinction. When they finally emerged into the blasted, fire-rimmed cavern where the pod fortress stood, they found Kaido there, his armor scorched, but himself unharmed. The civilians were emerging from the pod, blinking in the light of the custodian's lamps, their faces hollow with disbelief that the nightmare was truly over. Voss approached Vance, her eyes on the dead hive around them. It's done, Vance confirmed. She looked at him, then at Thorne's empty armor, at the determined, weary faces of the team. What are you? She asked, not in fear but in awe. Vance looked at his team, at the survivors, then out into the silent, frozen dark where the stars waited. We're the answer to a question the galaxy shouldn't have asked. The journey back to orbit aboard the Whisper was a somber affair. The survivors, wrapped in thermal blankets, sat in stunned silence, the adrenaline of their rescue crashing into the void left by trauma. The custodians moved among them, offering water, nutrient paste, a silent, solid presence. There were no cheers, only the deep, trembling exhaustion that comes after a storm. In the cockpit, Vance filed his preliminary report. The data was staggering. Visual logs, biological scans, Dr. Voss's harmonic research, and the final, chilling recording of the Queen's demise. He tagged it with the highest priority encryption and marked it for the attention of both HEF Command and the Galactic Consensus Council. 2 days later, in the sterile, brightly lit conference room of the nearest Consensus orbital station, the storm found its second wind. Vance stood before a holographic tribunal of representatives from the major species of the Consensus. There was the avian Telari, their feathers ruffled in agitation, the crystalline Grum, their facets shimmering with cold light, the amphibious Navan, their gill slits fluttering, and, at the center, the station's overseer, a venerable being of serene light named Iltherin. Overseer Iltherin's voice was a gentle chime. Sergeant Vance, your report is disturbing. The loss of life is a tragedy. Your team's bravery is noted. However, the consensus must question the response. The complete genocide of a sentient hive species. They were not sentient in any definition your laws recognize. Vance interrupted, his voice flat. He knew he was breaking protocol. He didn't care. They were a predatory, assimilating bioswarm. Sentience implies conscience, morality, the capacity for peace. These creatures had only one drive: consume, adapt, expand. Kappa 7 was a nutrient source. The first contact mediation ship was a tech sample. We were data to be harvested. There was no possibility of dialogue, only digestion. The Grum representatives' facets hardened. You presume to define consciousness for the galaxy? Your species is newborn to the void. Your solution is characteristically brutal. You used a resonant weapon of mass annihilation. Vance leaned forward, his palms on the cool table. We used a scalpel. A bomb would have cracked the planet. We applied precise, measured force to the central nervous system of the threat. We neutralized it with minimal collateral damage to the planetary biosphere, a biosphere they were in the process of eradicating. The Telari envoy squawked. And who appointed humanity as the galaxy's surgeons? You act unilaterally with terrifying efficiency. Unilaterally? Vance's laugh was short, harsh. We were the second responders. Your first contact vessel is part of the Hive's art collection. We were invited to this fight by your failure. We finished it with the only tool that worked: decisive, overwhelming finality. He activated a hollow projector, displaying the security log from Kappa 7, the Marine's last stand, the whisper, the nursery rhyme. Then he showed the footage from the Hive, the curated bodies, the integrated technology, the Queen's trophy room. This was not an attack. It was an autopsy on the living. They were learning how to kill us better, how to kill you better. Our brutality, as you call it, is the reason there are 23 survivors in your medical bay instead of 23 exhibits in a bugs gallery. It is the reason this bioswarm won't be knocking on your Hive world's door next cycle. The chamber fell silent. The Navan representative finally spoke, its voice a watery whisper. What do you propose, Sergeant of Earth? That we fear you, or thank you? Vance straightened. I propose you understand us. We are a young species. We remember the dark. We remember what it is to be prey on our own world. We clawed our way to the stars, not just out of curiosity, but out of a determination that nothing would ever hunt us again. We do not seek conflict, but when conflict seeks us, when it seeks any under our protection, we do not hesitate. We do not negotiate with things that see our children as resources. We end the threat, permanently. He looked at each alien representative in turn. You build a consensus on laws and debate. It is a magnificent achievement. We respect it. But laws don't stop a bladed limb in the dark. Debate doesn't save lives when the vent starts speaking. So, here is humanity's offer. We will stand with you. We will trade. We will learn. We will explore. But when the monsters come, and they will always come, you will be glad we are on the wall. Not because we love war, but because we love what lies behind us enough to become utterly terrible in its defense. He ended the transmission from the Hive Queen's final, fading scream, then the dead silence that followed. The contrast was absolute. The silence you hear, Vance said quietly, is the sound of safety. We bought it for you. Remember that the next time you question our methods. He didn't wait for dismissal. He turned and walked out of the chamber, the eyes of the galaxy burning into his back. A week later, Vance stood on the observation deck of a different ship, a human dreadnought called the Bastion. Below, the blue-green marble of Earth spun in its cradle of night and day. The report from a consensus had come in. They had, after heated debate, classified the bioswarm as a Cosmophage-class extinction event, retroactively justifying the custodian's actions. A formal, if chilly, note of gratitude had been extended. More importantly, a request for a joint HCF consensus security protocol for uncharted systems was being drafted.